I do think Donald Trump is a unique candidate because back in 2016, the Washington establishment never thought that Donald Trump was going to be president. And then that happened. And they all lost their minds and just didn't even give Donald Trump really a chance from the jump. I've never seen the media actively call the president a liar. When you can level that charge with George Bush, President Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden. And if Donald Trump becomes president, all of a sudden the media is going to start trying to pretend to be media again, calling the president a liar. Whereas if it's Kamala Harris, they'll just let her lie through her teeth.
We're living through history.
We really are.
Let's begin with your decision, late July, with your family, and you make this historic decision. Tell me the story.
Well, look, the polls we had showed that it was a neck-and-neck race. Would have been down to the wire. And I was concerned if I stayed in the race, that would be the topic. You'd be interviewing me about why did Nancy Pelosi say, why did someone, and I thought it'd be a real distraction, number one. Number two, when I ran the first time, I thought of myself as being a transition president. And the combination was that I thought it was a critical issue for me, still is, not a joke, maintaining this democracy. The most important thing to do, and that is we must defeat Trump.
Okay, number one, the only reason he dropped out is because the Democratic donors started telling Nancy Pelosi, hey, you're going to start this pressure campaign and start having every member of Congress come out and say, hey, we should have a different nominee. Joe Biden shouldn't be running for president. And I agree with that statement, but then their fallback plan was Kamala Harris. So now we have Kamala Harris as the nominee. And I sincerely think that Democratic leadership did not want Kamala Harris to be the nominee. They simply just ran out of time. Part of the reason is Joe Biden made this decision so late in the game, they couldn't actually have a primary process in order to try to select another nominee. Because I don't care what they say, even if Kamala Harris becomes president, Kamala Harris is not qualified to be president. Hillary Clinton was a significantly more seasoned stateswoman, and Democratic leadership would much prefer Hillary Clinton to be president, but we don't live in that reality. We live in the Kamala Harris reality. And all these people right now who are coming out and saying that Kamala Harris is the next best thing are the same people who have been lying to you for the last 3 years about Joe Biden's condition. And again, I don't buy anyone who says that Donald Trump is going to end democracy. Also keep in mind, when we say we're defending democracy, the Democrats have put their thumb on the scale in their last 3 primaries. Whereas I don't see the shenanigans being done on the Republican side. They give the voters a choice and they selected Trump twice. Whereas when we tried to have a real primary and you had Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson up there, the media laughed them out of town being like, we're not going to primary a sitting president. Maybe that would have been a good idea if Joe Biden decided to step down sooner. And the only reason we live in this reality is because the political class pulled his funding. Because if they didn't stop the funding, I guarantee Joe Biden would still be in the race. Sounds like more or less an oligarchy to me, defending democracy.
I saw those images of your family in the Oval Office sitting just over to your left as you addressed the nation. They came up to you after the speech. What did you say to them?
That's what they said to me. They said, like, my grandchildren call me Pop, my children call me Dad, and they said they were proud, and it mattered to me a lot.
When I saw you with your family in the Oval, I wondered, is he thinking of Bo, too?
Look, I can honestly say that I think of him all the time. Whenever I have a decision that's really hard to make, I literally ask myself, what would Bo do? He should be sitting there being interviewed, not me. He was really a fine man.
I feel a lot of sympathy towards Joe Biden because his story is really tragic. He lost his family and then he lost his son to cancer. And that's part of the reason he didn't run in 2016. Partially because Obama said, I'm going to support Hillary Clinton over you. But also losing a son, I can't imagine that pain.
Are you confident that there will be a peaceful transfer of power in January 2025?
If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all. I mean, if Trump loses, I'm not confident at all. He means what he says. We don't take him seriously. He means it. All the stuff about if we lose, there'll be a bloodbath. It's have to be a stolen election. Look what they're trying to do now in the local election districts where people count the votes. They're elected, they're putting people in place in states that they're going to count the votes, right? You can't love your country only when you win.
Again, I've made my feelings clear about the Capitol riots. I don't think it was an actual insurrection that was going to threaten the levers of power of the United States and overthrow the government. I simply thought it was a riot that just got out of hand. And I genuinely think that Donald Trump is convinced that he won the last election where he lost. And he was mad because there was a bunch of gerrymandering and cheating that's done in every election cycle. He's not special. Mitch McConnell even acknowledged that there's irregularities and criminality in all of our elections, but it wasn't enough to change the outcome.
On foreign policy, Israel's war with Hamas, is a ceasefire possible before the end of your term?
Yes, it's still possible. The plan I put together endorsed by the G7, endorsed by the UN Security Council, et cetera, is still viable. And I'm working literally every single day and my whole team to see to it that it doesn't escalate into a regional war.
However you feel about Joe Biden's actions in Gaza, I think every president would have done the exact same thing, which is full-throated support behind Israel. But the thing that's different is I think Joe Biden being in this diminished state has emboldened people like Benjamin Netanyahu to take actions where he knows the United States will back him no matter what. I don't think President Obama would allow Benjamin Netanyahu to make him look like a fool on the world stage. And President Obama, before he left office, even allowed a Security Council resolution to go through condemning the settlements in Israel. And even 2016, Joe Biden, I think, would have pushed back on the extremist elements in the Israeli government. Is a ceasefire still possible? I don't really know how Israel can accept any leadership of Hamas having any stake in the government. And the United States has been trying to push the Israeli government to try to find actors to replace Hamas. That's directly from their defense minister, Gallant. He says, "I will not allow Israeli troops to try to govern Gaza directly." And people like Benjamin Netanyahu are trying to make that happen. But if a ceasefire does happen, two things. Kamala Harris probably has a higher likelihood to become president because people look at that who are disenfranchised in Michigan and be like, hey, well, the administration did something. And two, Benjamin Netanyahu very likely would have his government collapse and then there would be new elections and that probably would be the end of him. So there's all the incentive in the world to not have a ceasefire right now.
Just told me in March of 2021, you took him into the Oval Office and pointed up at FDR's portrait and said, we're going big.
I mean, look what we've been able to do. We've created 16 million jobs. I mean, real new jobs. We're on the brink of having the private sector invest over $1 trillion in the American economy. One of the things I fought for as a senator for a long time was to change the dynamic of how we grow the economy, not from the top down, but from the bottom up. The idea of trickle-down economics doesn't work in my view.
I mean, he can tout his job accomplishments, but I don't care what anyone says. The American economy is not great right now, at least if you're a normal American, because a lot of us are having trouble affording energy or our grocery bills, insurance rates have gone up. I'm making less money than I was in 2016 when technically I was making more money, but my purchasing power has gone down. But if you're voting on who would be better for the economy, I think in the short term, if Donald Trump was elected, he would make decisions to try to get the economy rolling again, like cutting interest rates and cutting taxes, and I don't think he'll really care what happens in the long term. But in the short term, I think the economy would improve quicker with Donald Trump as president than if Kamala Harris was president. And if you're voting for Kamala Harris, you're basically voting for the status quo, including no change with the policies of Israel and Gaza.
To those who have expressed skepticism about how much you'll be on the trail or about the rest of your term, raise questions about your health, what do you say to them?
All I can say is watch, that's all. Look, I had a really, really bad day in that debate because I was sick, but I have no serious problem. I was talking to Governor Shapiro, who's a friend. We have to win Pennsylvania, my original home state. He and I are putting together a campaign tour in Pennsylvania. I'm going to be campaigning in other states as well. And I'm going to do whatever Kamala thinks I can do to help most.
I'm very interested to see what happens with the Great Orange Man debating Kamala Harris. All these people are saying that Kamala Harris will destroy Donald Trump. I don't buy it. I think Donald Trump is going to gish gallop the whole time. And Kamala Harris, who I don't think is great on thinking on her feet, she's a former prosecutor and I've seen her grill Bill Barr, so she's obviously smart, but being smart comes in different forms. And I think thinking on her feet is not one of the things she's great at, because I've seen her repeat herself and gaffe multiple interviews, and she's not going to be able to hide forever.
How do you want history to remember President Biden?
That he proved democracy can work, got us out of a pandemic. It produced the single greatest economic recovery in American history. We're the most powerful economy in the world. And it demonstrated that we can pull the nation together. But one of the problems is I knew all the things we did were going to take a little time to work their way through. So now people are realizing, oh, that highway, the biggest mistake we made, we didn't put up signs saying Joe did it.
I think all these bills that he passed, it's going to be very similar to like what Jimmy Carter did. He passed a lot of infrastructure bills. You just don't see the fruits of it for 20, 30 years. And do I think that Joe Biden is like the worst president ever? No. Do I think he's one of the best presidents ever? No. I certainly think he's better than George Bush. I would put President Obama slightly higher than George W. Bush. He was very similar to him, at least when it came to the security state and this surveillance state we're living in right now. That was all the Democrats. Donald Trump didn't start a bunch of new conflicts around the world, but he did increase drone strikes by over 400%. Where's Joe Biden fall through all this? I think he was more or less a transition president before he changed his mind. Similar to like President Obama, just a status quo guy. No real change. When things are bad for the American people, they don't really care because the rich continue to get richer. I do think Donald Trump is a unique candidate because back in 2016, the Washington establishment never thought that Donald Trump was going to be president, and then that happened, and they all lost their minds and just didn't even give Donald Trump really a chance from the jump. I've never seen the media actively call the president a liar, when you can level that charge with George Bush, President Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden. And there's an innate bias in that. The press is always supposed to be the adversary of the United States government. It's supposed to be the fourth branch, but that's not what they are today. And if Donald Trump becomes president, all of a sudden the media is going to start trying to pretend to be media again, calling the president a liar. Whereas if it's Kamala Harris, they'll just let her lie through her teeth.
Biden is sounding the alarm in a way sitting presidents rarely, if ever, do.
The stakes are that high to you.
I give you my word. I think they're that high. Mark my words.
LBJ said if Barry Goldwater was elected, there'd be a nuclear war. Let's not be distracted by the current rhetoric that Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy. Your party literally said if someone was elected, they would end humanity and there would be a nuclear war.
If he wins this this election, watch what happens. It's a danger. He's a genuine danger to American security. There's little regard by the MAGA Republicans for the political institutions. That's what holds this country together. That's what democracy is about. That's who we are as a nation.
All right, let's dissect some of the things he said. These political institutions hold the country together. A normal American probably looks at our political system. Congress has like one of the lowest approval ratings over anything. This political system sucks because every 4 years we engage in these charades thinking there will be real change. I think the security state will get whatever it wants, regardless if it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump as president.